What is up, everybody, and welcome to FLW Videos. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about a raid guide for Kyurem in Pokemon Go. So initially, we knew that Kyurem was going to be coming out, of course, with Zekrom and then Reshiram. It's going to end up coming out next. But something interesting kind of happened with this Pokemon. So initially, once this Pokemon was released, we ended up seeing that the move Icy Wind was loaded into this Pokemon's move pool, meaning that there ended up being 2 ice moves in total for this Pokemon. However, a couple of days ago, we ended up seeing an update for this Pokemon where Icy Wind was removed. PvP players were super annoyed by that because Icy Wind could actually make Kyurem extremely viable. Now it could technically drop its performance some, but I'll of course be doing a deep dive in a couple of days just to confirm that the moveset does not change yet again. But today's episode is going to be all about the counters. We're actually going to be heading over to Game Press, taking a look at the charts and then scrolling through a couple of Pokemon so that we can develop the absolute team to go up against this Pokemon. If you do enjoy it, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. So with Kyurem being less than a week away from being released, you may want to go ahead and kind of work on your team. I know I do as well, so looking through this really does help me out a ton. So let's go ahead and scroll through this. So by the way, with what Game Press does, they honestly make it super easy to kind of break up the Pokemon into different tiers, what exactly you would end up needing. And as far as the Supreme Pokemon is concerned, there's really actually just one set of Pokemon that is going to absolutely dominate against this Kyurem, and that's going to be Metagross. So with Metagross, you have to be a little bit careful though, because it is going to actually need the Community Day exclusive move, Meteor Mash, which happened a couple of years ago. I do already have a couple of those ready, and if you've got at least one Metagross with this exclusive move, Meteor Mash, that's going to go a long way to help you versus this Kyurem. Anyways, if we go ahead and scroll down, we can go ahead and check out a couple of other Pokemon that are worth noting. And generally speaking, you're going to end up seeing like a lot of steel type Pokemon showcasing here, and it's just kind of interesting just because with Dialga, you've actually got a lot of flexibility. With Kyurem being a part dragon type, it's also going to end up being weak to dragon as well. But I think Lucario is honestly a very interesting Pokemon as well, just because of Kyurem being part ice type. It's going to also be weak to the fighting type, and honestly with Lucario, the fighting type moves are just super good for this Pokemon. Counter, of course, and then finally Aura Sphere. A little bit on the expensive side. I have one at about 2500 CP or so I may go ahead and use that and switch over the moveset to that. But anyways, if we go ahead and scroll down, something interesting that we could of course take a look at is Rampardos. Rampardos just puts out some DPS. Just be careful with this Pokemon though, because it is a little bit of a glass cannon, so just kind of keep that in mind. But anyways, if we go ahead and scroll down, you're finally starting to see quite a bit of diversity with these different counters. Most of the time you see like, you know, a bunch of fighting type kind of leading the pack, a bunch of dragon types, but there is so much flexibility with this one. For example, we have a fighting type Pokemon like Keldor. I'm excited to finally be able to use one, so excited about that. And then we have a Rhyperior. So Rhyperior is going to be hitting it from the rock typing, but of course you are going to have that Community Day exclusive move, Rock Wrecker. If we go ahead and scroll down, I would argue that probably one of the best budget Pokemon that you will end up seeing on this list as far as the performance is concerned is Machamp. I say budget just because it's been out for a very long time. The moveset countering Dynamic Punch has been made available since it ended up being put into the game, and it's been the dominant Pokemon from the fighting type until like Conkeldurr and a couple other ones came out. But Machamp has been a solid Pokemon, been there for a long time, so I think Machamp could be kind of like the staple item pick if you don't have the more exotic Pokemon that we talked about up above. We can go ahead and scroll down a little bit more. Something interesting is you could end up going with the Gardevoir. I know we had a Shadow Gardevoir earlier, but I just don't know if people have powered that up. When we see Shadow Pokemon, yes, they do great, but I just personally don't believe that a lot of people have them, so I don't necessarily like covering them or focusing on them too much. Anyways, if we go ahead and scroll down, we can see that they created a section called the Glass Counters. Now, I know I pointed out Rampardos earlier. I honestly think Rampardos should be considered a part of the Glass Counters, but that's just from like personal experience. But anyways, if we go ahead and scroll through a couple of these, some of the Pokemon that lead the pack are going to be those dragons, where we've got a Rayquaza, we've got a Salamence, and then more exotic in my opinion would be something like a Garchomp, and just plenty more dragon type Pokemon basically. So dragon types are going to be super effective against dragon types, so you basically got to get lined up with that Kyurem and hope that you don't end up with any type of dragon type move, but with it also being part ice and having a bunch of ice moves, I would probably leave most dragon types in my Pokebox and just not end up using them, but that's of course my personal opinion. And at the bottom, if you're interested in a tank counter, I think that this is pretty cool to disclose this. Tank counters mean these Pokemon are going to be able to last a long period of time. So if you are trying to save up on revives, trying to be more efficient in that way, not trying to use a bunch of potions, anything like that, maybe consider using these Pokemon. I think one of the more interesting ones is probably Jirachi. Of course, going with that Doom Desire could end up working wonders for you. Heatran finally gets at least some use out of this, so I think that that's pretty cool. But anyways, now that we've covered all of those Pokemon, we can go ahead and scroll down to this raid graph. And I love it when Swag Tips covers this raid graph. I think it looks so cool when you just dive into it. So basically what's going to happen is you want to be as high as possible, meaning you do a ton of DPS, and then you also want to be over as far as possible, meaning that you have a large total damage output. So the goal is to end up in this far corner as much as you possibly can. So when we take a look at it, basically what happens is we've got those Metagrosses just kind of out there on their own. Some interesting picks that we talked about before are going to be those tank groups. And then we've got those glass cannons up here. So I wanted to briefly go ahead and cover what it would be like if you were to attempt to do a duo instead. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that. As far as the team composition is concerned, Metagross and Shadow Metagross are easily the top Pokemon that you want to have for this raid. It is very important to be able to use that Metagross. They are going to lead the pack. And then of course, like we talked about before, we've got Lucario, Dialga, and then I guess Shadow Gardevoir. I don't know how many people have that, but maybe you've got a Dialga from PvP or something like that, so you may have that one ready. It's just important to kind of use those Pokemon for sure. But anyway, as far as the battle strategy is concerned, they did go ahead and point out a couple things to us to say that if you've got the right counters, the clock isn't necessarily going to be a problem. So I'm excited about this. I think with this Pokemon being doable in that way, it's going to make it more likely that people are going to rate it. Even though it may not be the best Pokemon in the world to be able to do this, I think that if people can duo it, they're more likely to, just for the fact that they can simply do it. They can focus on rewards such as the rare candy, and then of course such as the different TMs. So beyond just the actual resource farming, you could also work on getting the candy for Kyurem, because later on we'll end up getting the black Kyurem as well as the white Kyurem. It has an improved set of stats from just the base Kyurem form. So for me, I'm kind of keeping that in my mind. Sure, Kyurem is going to be great. May not be the greatest, but I'm going to go out there and go ahead and get some candy farmed in. Anyways, I would love to know what Pokemon you plan to use versus Kyurem. Is it a Metagross? Is it a Lucario? Is it something else? Anything and everything, let me know in the comments section below, and I will see you next time. Huge shout out to the supporters over at Patreon. If you would like to get exclusive perks, make sure to check out that link in the description, and I will see you next time.